All right, I have another new Substack piece out. The Birth of Art and Death, Part 2, the morphology of the two cultures. So this continues from the one I posted last night, which was Part 1. And I had already posted an introduction to the book under the title, The Wonder Child versus the Elders. I may actually change that title to The Birth of Art and Death. I think I like that better. And so the word morphology, of course, indicates a Spenglerian treatment now of these two culture forms, the Neanderthals and the modern Homo sapiens. They're two completely distinct cultures, and both have their own cultural forms. It is not the case that the Neanderthals did not have a culture. They most certainly did. That culture enters into its high culture period at about 100,000 BC. And so it had been going at a very slow tempo for 100,000 years or so before it was wiped out by the incoming modern Homo sapiens coming up through Africa and Palestine and then across over into Europe. And where those two cultures cross, then we get a cultural process, possibly the prototype, although I suspect not, for the process of an incoming culture, which has this, it does what Joseph Campbell called is land nama, which is land naming and claiming. When a population comes into a new landscape and they name it and claim it with their own mythological vocabulary. And then the incoming population is slowly acculturated by the native population, but in this case the native population was completely and ruthlessly and very shamefully exterminated. Okay, I'll read you the first couple of paragraphs here. Cultural collision. There were two cultural amoebae then, borrowing a term from Oswald Spengler's final work, The Dawn of World History. The Neanderthal amoeba spans a great arc, west to east from Spain across Europe and down into Palestine. The modern Homo sapiens amoeba moves from south to north, out of East Africa and up into Palestine, and then crosses over into Central Europe. Where these two cultures met in Central Europe, a long and intensive process of cultural as well as genetic semiotics were interchanged until the incoming culture had completely digested and assimilated the much older native culture of the Neanderthals who had occupied Europe since the time of Homo heidelbergensis, circa 500,000 BC. The high culture phase of the Neanderthals, however, had only been up and running since about 100,000 BC. The high culture phase of the Homo sapiens took about 10,000 years to get going and then entered into its springtime at about 33,000 BC, producing a singularity which took place in Europe about 35,000 years ago, which John E. Pfeiffer termed the creative explosion, a truly seismic event in human history, one that forever altered the topology of human culture. The very metabolism of history was transformed by this event, for culture before it and culture after it are two completely different things. However, there was culture before that event, for it is now absolutely unequivocal that the Neanderthals had a sophisticated culture style and form all their own. Their earth symbol is that of the hand. Recall their invention of the first hand signatures at El Castillo. This is a very tactile, hands-on culture. There is evidence, for instance, that they were using black manganese and red ochre to make tattoos on their bodies. We have already discussed Neanderthal cave art, and also their well-attested custom of burying their dead. But in addition, they had their own forms of ornamentation, such as necklaces made from eagle talons or seashells. They also created the earliest musical instrument, namely the bone flute. And they made Mousterian stone and bone tools, as well as Acheulean hand axes, which were far more aesthetically pleasing than was necessary for mere utilitarian function, if there was one, since they were more likely ritual implements. The vibrant colors of the stones which they selected for their tools, furthermore, is evidence of their love for beautiful objects. They obviously love to use their hands to pick up rocks and stones. These are Mousterian tools and jewelry and their Acheulean hand axes. Okay, I'll stop right there because I want you to subscribe. It's $5 a month if you want to read this. There will be many, many of these chapters from this book, which is an old manuscript that I'm completely revising and will put out probably with a completely different title that it had. So that's it. It's $5 a month to subscribe. I still do astrology readings for those of you who are interested in that. Hit me up at johndavidebert@gmail.com, and I'll see you on Substack.